Your daughter needs a home, mine wants a mother. Single father offers a homeless alien widow. Eric Donovan stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting the dark circles under his eyes. 6 months since Sarah's passing, and he still couldn't get used to the empty space beside him in bed. The orbital station's artificial daylight cycle was beginning, illuminating his apartment's sparse interior through the viewport. "Daddy, I can't find my school tablet," Lily's voice echoed from somewhere in their cluttered living quarters. "Check under the couch," he called back, running a hand through his short blonde hair. At 35, he was still in his prime physically. The station's enhanced gravity kept his muscles toned, but emotionally he felt decades older. The apartment chirped with an incoming message. Eric tapped his wrist communicator. "Donovan here." "Engineer Donovan, we need you at Junction 42. The atmospheric regulators are acting up again." His supervisor's gruff voice left no room for argument. Eric sighed. "I'll be there in 20. He found Lily in the living room, her golden curls bouncing as she dug through piles of laundry. At 7 years old, she had her mother's smile and his stubbornness. "Found it," she exclaimed, triumphantly holding up her tablet. "Great. Now, breakfast." Eric navigated through the kitchen's chaos, nearly tripping over a toy hover car. The food synthesizer beeped unhappily when he tried to program it. "Damn it. Darn it." "You said a bad word," Lily giggled. "I know, sweetheart." "Sorry." He managed to coax the machine into producing something resembling oatmeal. "Listen, I have to go in early today. Mrs. Wolf next door will take you to school." Lily's smile faded. "Again? You promised we'd have breakfast together." "I know, and I'm sorry." The guilt was a familiar weight on his shoulders. "But the station needs fixing, and you're the only one who can do it," she finished, her small voice resigned. "That's what you always say." Eric knelt beside her chair. "Hey, I promise I'll make it up to you. How about we go to the observation deck this weekend? See the stars?" Her face brightened slightly. "Promise?" "Cross my heart." He kissed her forehead. "Now eat up. I'll call Mrs. Wolf." After dropping Lily off, Eric trudged to work, his mind a battlefield of professional obligations and parental guilt. The orbital station Harmony was home to over 10,000 beings, humans and various alien species working together in what the politicians called a beacon of interstellar cooperation. To Eric, it was just where he fixed things that broke, earned his credits, and tried to raise his daughter alone. By evening, exhaustion had settled deep in his bones. The apartment was in even worse shape than when he left it. Dishes piled in the sink, Lily's toys scattered across the floor, and a message from her teacher about incomplete homework. Eric collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. Something had to change. He couldn't keep juggling a demanding job and single parenthood. The station's childcare services were expensive and impersonal, and finding reliable help was nearly impossible. With a resigned sigh, he pulled up his tablet and began drafting an advertisement. "Single human father seeks household assistance. Duties include childcare for a 7-year-old girl, meal preparation, and general housekeeping. Competitive compensation. All species welcome. References required." He hesitated before sending it to the station's community board. It felt like admitting defeat, like he was failing Sarah's memory by not being able to handle everything on his own. "What would you do, Sarah?" he whispered to the empty room. The silence offered no answers, but Lily's small voice did as she padded into the living room in her pajamas. "Daddy, I'm hungry." Eric checked the time, 20:30. He'd forgotten dinner again. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Let's see what we can find." He rummaged through the kitchen, eventually producing a synthetic protein bar and some fruit. As Lily ate her makeshift dinner, Eric made his decision. He tapped send on the advertisement. "What's that, Daddy?" Lily asked, peering at his tablet. "I'm getting us some help around here," he said, trying to sound confident. "Someone to make sure you get proper meals and help with homework when I'm working late." Lily considered this. "Like a new mommy?" The question caught him off guard. "No, honey. Just someone to help out." "Oh." She looked disappointed. "I miss having a mommy." Eric's heart clenched. "I know, sweetheart. I miss her too." Later, after tucking Lily in, Eric checked his messages. The advertisement had already received one response, a brief note from someone named Shaylee requesting an interview the following day. Eric stared at the unfamiliar name, wondering what he was getting himself into. Eric spent the morning frantically tidying the apartment. He'd never been good at housekeeping. Sarah had always handled that. But he couldn't interview a potential housekeeper in this chaos. "Lily, please put your toys away," he called, shoving a pile of laundry into the bedroom closet. "But I'm making something special," Lily protested from her room. Eric checked the time. 9:45. Shaylee would arrive at 10. "Whatever you're making, it needs to be cleaned up before our visitor gets here." The doorbell chimed precisely at 10 o'clock. Eric smoothed his shirt, took a deep breath, and opened the door. His prepared greeting died in his throat. Standing before him was a slender, humanoid woman with light blue skin that seemed to shimmer subtly in the corridor lighting. Her face was elegantly proportioned, with high cheekbones and large sea-green eyes that regarded him with cautious intelligence. Where humans had hair, she had graceful tendrils pulled back into a neat ponytail. She wore a simple but well-maintained gray tunic and pants that somehow managed to accentuate her delicate frame. But what caught Eric off guard wasn't her alien beauty. It was the small blue-skinned child half hiding behind her legs. "Mr. Donovan?" The woman's voice had a musical quality, her standard English perfect, but with an accent he couldn't place. "I am Shaylee. I hope I am not late." Eric recovered his composure. "No, you're right on time. Please come in." As they entered, he noticed Shaylee carried only a small bag, and both she and the child wore the standard-issue clothing given to new arrivals at the station's refugee center. "This is my daughter Iris," Shaylee said, gently encouraging the shy girl forward. "I apologize for bringing her. Our childcare arrangements fell through this morning." "It's no problem," Eric said, though he hadn't expected to be interviewing a package deal. "My daughter Lily is here too." As if on cue, Lily burst from her room, holding what appeared to be a crudely made welcome banner decorated with stick figures and glitter. "Is she here yet?" "I made..." Lily stopped, staring wide-eyed at the blue-skinned pair. Then, with the unfiltered honesty of a 7-year-old, "You're blue. That's so cool." "Lily," Eric admonished, "that's not how we greet guests." But Shaylee laughed, a tinkling sound like wind chimes. "It is quite all right. Yes, little one, we are blue. My people are called Nilarians." Iris, who appeared to be around Lily's age, peeked out from behind her mother. Lily immediately thrust her homemade banner forward. "I made this for you. It says, 'Welcome to our home.'" The letters were barely legible beneath the excessive glitter. "It is beautiful," Shaylee said, accepting it with genuine appreciation. Iris reached out tentatively to touch the glitter, and Lily grabbed her hand. "Want to see my room? I have toys." Before anyone could respond, Lily was pulling Iris down the hallway. "Lily, wait!" Eric called, but the girls had already disappeared. "Children adapt so quickly," Shaylee observed with a small smile. "Perhaps we should follow their example." Eric gestured toward the living room. "Please have a seat. Would you like something to drink? The synthesizer's acting up, but I can make tea the old-fashioned way." "Water would be fine, thank you." As Eric fetched water, he observed Shaylee taking in the apartment, the mismatched furniture, the half-finished engineering projects, the family photos. She didn't seem judgmental, merely observant. "So," Eric began as he returned with 2 glasses, "your message mentioned you recently arrived on Harmony?" Shaylee nodded, accepting the water. 3 weeks ago, my husband was a diplomat. He died during an attack on our outpost in the Rigel system. Her voice remained steady, but her tendrils seemed to droop slightly. The Terran Alliance offered refugee status to survivors. Iris and I had nowhere else to go. "I'm sorry for your loss," Eric said, the words feeling inadequate but sincere. "My wife, Sarah, passed 6 months ago. Bacterial infection. The medics couldn't identify it in time." Their eyes met in shared understanding. "It is difficult," Shaylee said softly. "Raising a child alone in an unfamiliar place." From Lily's room came the sound of laughter, followed by a crash and sudden silence. Eric was halfway to his feet when Lily's voice called out, "It's okay." Nothing broke. He sank back down, exchanging a knowing look with Shaylee. Your advertisement mentioned competitive compensation, Shaylee said, returning to business. I should be transparent. I need more than credits. The refugee housing is temporary, and I've been unable to secure permanent quarters. Station administration prioritizes established residents and essential personnel. Eric frowned. They're making you leave. In 2 weeks, we can apply for extension, but… She shrugged elegantly. Bureaucracy moves slowly. Another crash from Lily's room, followed by a wail that definitely wasn't his daughter's voice. Eric and Shaylee both stood immediately. They found Lily looking guilty beside a toppled shelf, while Iris clutched the broken pieces of what appeared to be a small crystalline figurine. I'm sorry, Lily blurted. I was showing her my stuff, and I bumped the shelf, and… Iris's sobs intensified, her tendrils writhing in distress. Shaylee knelt beside her daughter, murmuring in a language Eric's translator didn't catch. She gently took the broken pieces. It was her father's gift, Shaylee explained quietly to Eric. The only thing she has from him. Eric felt a pang of empathy. He knelt beside Lily. Sweetheart, accidents happen, but we need to be more careful with other people's belongings. To his surprise, Lily approached Iris and awkwardly patted her shoulder. I'm really sorry. Maybe my daddy can fix it? He fixes everything on the whole station. Iris looked up hopefully through her tears, and Eric found himself faced with 2 expectant child faces and 1 politely skeptical adult one. I can try, he said, accepting the fragments from Shaylee. Their fingers brushed, and he noticed her skin was surprisingly warm. Eric's engineering workshop was a sanctuary of organized chaos. Tools hung in precise arrangements on the walls, while components and half-finished projects occupied every available surface. It was here, 3 days after their first meeting, that he carefully reassembled Iris's figurine. The delicate piece, a stylized representation of what Shaylee had explained was a sacred animal from their homeworld, had required specialized adhesive and steady hands. Eric worked under a magnifying lens, his fingers moving with the same precision he applied to station repairs. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. Shaylee stood in the doorway, 2 steaming mugs in hand. The girls are asleep, she said, offering him one of the mugs. I thought you might need refreshment. Thanks. Eric accepted the drink, noticing how quickly Shaylee had learned his preference for the strong, bitter tea humans called engineer's fuel. She'd been working for him for only 3 days, but already the apartment felt transformed. Organized, clean, and somehow more like a home than it had since Sarah's passing. Is that… Shaylee leaned closer, her tendrils shifting forward with interest as she examined the nearly completed figurine. Almost done, Eric said, aware of her proximity, the subtle floral scent that seemed to emanate from her skin. Just 1 more piece. With careful movements, he placed the final fragment, holding it steady until the adhesive set. The repair lines were barely visible. There, he said, presenting it to Shaylee. What do you think? She took the figurine with reverent hands, turning it in the light. It's perfect. I cannot believe you restored it so completely. Her sea-green eyes met his. Iris will be overjoyed. It's the least I could do after Lily's enthusiasm. Shaylee's lips curved into a smile. Your daughter has brought mine out of her shell more in 3 days than I managed in 3 months. Iris has not stopped talking about her new friend Lily since we arrived. The warmth in her voice stirred something in Eric's chest. He cleared his throat. Speaking of arrivals, I wanted to talk to you about your housing situation. Shaylee's tendrils stiffened slightly, a reaction he'd come to recognize as tension. I received notice today. We must vacate refugee housing in 10 days, not 2 weeks as originally stated. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. Eric set down his tools, gathering his courage. I have a spare bedroom. It's small, but it would fit you and Iris until you find something permanent. Shaylee's eyes widened. You would offer us shelter, but you barely know us. I know enough, Eric said. You're excellent with Lily. The apartment hasn't been this organized since… He paused, and the girls get along so well. It would not be proper, Shaylee said, though her tendrils had relaxed. In Nilarian culture, unmarried adults sharing living spaces, intimate. It's just temporary, Eric assured her, though the word intimate lingered in his mind. And strictly professional? You'd still be Lily's caretaker and housekeeper, just with room and board included in your compensation. Shaylee studied him, her head tilted slightly. Humans are remarkably pragmatic. Among my people, such an arrangement would imply intentions. What kind of intentions? Eric asked, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. Intentions of bonding, she said softly. What humans might call courtship. The workshop suddenly felt several degrees warmer. Eric cleared his throat again. Well, human customs are different. We're more flexible about living arrangements. Are you? Her tendrils moved in a way he hadn't seen before. Almost playful. How interesting. On Nylar, a male offering shelter to a female, and her offspring is the first step in forming a new family unit. Eric's mouth went dry. That's not, I wasn't suggesting. Shaylee's musical laugh interrupted him. I am teasing you, Eric. We Nylarians do understand cultural differences. Her expression softened. But I am deeply grateful for your offer. Truly, for Iris's sake, I accept. Relief flooded through him, along with something else he wasn't ready to name. Great. That's great. You can move in this weekend. There is one more Nylarian custom I should mention, Shaylee said, her tone serious but her eyes holding a hint of mischief. When accepting shelter, it is customary to seal the agreement with a gesture of appreciation. Before Eric could ask what kind of gesture, Shaylee leaned forward and pressed her lips to his cheek. The contact lasted only a second, but the warmth lingered long after she pulled away. That is how humans show appreciation, yes? She asked innocently. Something like that, Eric managed, his heart racing inexplicably. Good night, Eric, she said, turning to leave. And thank you for fixing Iris's treasure. You humans have remarkably skilled hands. As she disappeared down the hallway, Eric remained frozen, his fingertips touching the spot where her lips had been. He told himself the sudden heat in his blood was just from working too long in the confined space of the workshop. It had nothing to do with the graceful way Shaylee moved, or how her eyes seemed to see right through him, or how her presence made the empty apartment feel like a home again. Nothing at all. The next morning, as Eric prepared for work, he overheard Lily and Iris chattering excitedly in the kitchen. And you'll live in the room next to mine, honestly, Lily was saying. We can have sleepovers every night. Not every night, Shaylee corrected gently, setting breakfast before the girls. She looked up as Eric entered, her tendrils arranged in what he was beginning to recognize as a pleased expression. Good morning. Morning, he replied, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Eric felt that same unexpected warmth from the previous night. I've told Iris about your generous offer, Shaylee said. She is quite excited. Can we paint the room blue, Daddy? Lily asked. Blue like Iris and Shaylee. Eric laughed. We'll see, sweetheart. As he headed to work, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that his impulsive offer had set something significant in motion. Something that went beyond a simple housing arrangement. The thought should have terrified him, but instead he found himself smiling all the way to his shift. Moving day arrived with unexpected ceremony. Eric had anticipated a simple transfer of the few belongings Shaylee and Iris had brought from their homeworld. Instead, he found himself participating in what Shaylee called the ritual of new dwelling. The space must be cleansed of lingering energies and blessed for new beginnings, she explained, lighting a small burner that released a sweet-smelling smoke. Eric watched fascinated as Shaylee moved gracefully through the apartment, her tendrils flowing freely around her shoulders. She wore traditional Nylarian garments, a flowing azure robe embroidered with silver symbols that accentuated her slender form. Is this really necessary, Yamanik? He asked, though he found himself entranced by the elegant movements of her ritual dance. For Nylarians, a dwelling is not merely shelter, but an extension of oneself, she replied, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality. The energies we bring must harmonize with those already present. Lily and Iris followed behind Shaylee, giggling as they mimicked her movements. Eric couldn't help smiling at the sight. Now, Shaylee said, approaching him with the burner, the primary resident must accept the new energies. What do I do? Simply breathe in the essence and state your acceptance. Eric leaned forward, inhaling the aromatic smoke. It was surprisingly pleasant, reminiscent of cinnamon and something exotic he couldn't identify. I accept the new energies, he said uncertainly. Shaylee's eyes crinkled with amusement. Perhaps with more conviction? Eric straightened his shoulders. I accept these new energies into my home, he declared more firmly. Excellent. Shaylee's tendrils rippled with approval. Now we must seal the ritual with the joining of essences. The what now? Before he could react, Shaylee stepped closer and pressed her palm against his. A tingling sensation spread from the contact point, warm and not unpleasant. In Nylarian tradition, she explained, her voice softer, the joining of essences symbolizes the merging of life paths. Eric was acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle floral scent that seemed uniquely hers, the warmth of her blue skin against his. Is this still part of the moving in ritual? He asked, his voice unexpectedly husky. Shaylee's sea green eyes met his, holding a hint of mischief. Perhaps not entirely. The moment was broken by Lily's excited voice. Can we do the essence joining too? Shaylee smoothly stepped back, her professional demeanor returning. Of course, everyone in the dwelling should participate. As the girls pressed their palms together, giggling at the tickly feeling, Eric caught Shaylee watching him, something unspoken in her gaze. The rest of the day passed in domestic harmony as they arranged the spare room for Shaylee and Iris. By evening, the apartment felt transformed, not just by the physical additions, but by a new energy that seemed to permeate the space. After the girls were asleep, Eric found Shaylee in the kitchen, preparing a Nylarian tea. Thank you for indulging our customs, she said, offering him a cup. I know they must seem strange to you. Different, not strange, Eric corrected, accepting the beverage. I found it fascinating. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, that same tingling sensation returning briefly. The ritual seems to have worked, he added. The place feels, I don't know, more alive somehow. Shaylee smiled. That is its purpose, to awaken the dwelling to new possibilities. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. I should warn you, Eric finally said. There might be some talk around the station about our arrangement. Talk? Gossip. Humans can be speculative about living situations like ours. Shaylee's tendrils shifted in what he now recognized as amusement. Like Nylarians then, already several of my people at the refugee center expressed concern about my virtue. Eric nearly choked on his tea. Your virtue? Indeed. They believe I have become your... She hesitated, searching for the right word. Concubine. Is that the term? What? No, Eric felt his face heating. We're not... Shaylee's musical laugh interrupted his stammering. I know, Eric. I explained our professional arrangement. Her expression turned more serious. Though some were still concerned, relationships between species are uncommon. We don't have a relationship, Eric said quickly. I mean, not that kind of relationship. Of course. Was there a hint of disappointment in her voice? Or was he imagining it? The next morning brought the first test of their new arrangement. Eric arrived at work to find his human colleagues unusually interested in his personal life. Heard you've got yourself an alien girlfriend, Martinez said with a suggestive wink as they calibrated environmental controls. She's my daughter's caretaker, Eric replied firmly. And she needed housing. It's a practical arrangement. Sure, practical, Martinez grinned. That why you've been smiling all morning? Before Eric could respond, his supervisor called him to an urgent meeting. The station's Nylarian representative, Counselor Trell Van, had requested his presence. The counselor was an imposing figure, taller than most Nylarians, with elaborate tendrils arranged in what Eric assumed was a formal style. His expression was severe as Eric entered the conference room. Engineer Donovan, Trell said without preamble, I understand you have taken one of our refugees into your home. Yes, sir. Shaylee and her daughter needed housing, and I needed household help. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Trell Van's tendrils stiffened. You should be aware that in our culture, such arrangements carry significant implications. Shaylee is the widow of a respected diplomat. Her reputation is of concern to our community. Eric felt a flash of irritation. With all due respect, counselor, Shaylee is an adult capable of making her own decisions. And on a human station, human customs tend to prevail. This is an interspecies station, Mr. Donovan. All cultures deserve respect, Trelvan leaned forward. I merely wish to ensure you understand the potential complications of your arrangement. The only complication I see is people making assumptions about a perfectly innocent situation, Eric replied, struggling to maintain his professional tone. As he left the meeting, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the counselor's concern than cultural propriety. Something in the Nilarian's manner had seemed almost possessive. Daddy, I don't want to go to school today, Lily announced at breakfast, pushing her food around her plate. Eric looked up from his engineering reports. Why not, sweetheart? You love school. Lily exchanged a glance with Iris, who suddenly seemed very interested in her bowl of Nilarian grain porridge. Some of the kids are being mean, Lily finally admitted. They say our family is weird. Eric set down his tablet. What kids? Mostly the Praxian boys, Lily said, and Counselor Trelvan's son, Mivran. He called Iris a species traitor. Shaylee, who had been preparing lunches at the counter, went still. Her tendrils coiled tightly. A sign of distress Eric had come to recognize. Did you tell your teacher? Eric asked, keeping his voice calm despite the anger building inside him. Lily shook her head. Mr. Bennett was busy. And anyway, Iris said we should just ignore them. Eric glanced at Iris, who hadn't spoken. The usually quiet girl seemed even more withdrawn than usual. Is that true, Iris? Shaylee asked gently. Did Mevran say these things to you? Iris nodded slightly. He said Mother was dishonoring Father's memory by living with a human male. Her voice was barely audible. And that I shouldn't play with Lily because humans are primitive. Eric felt a surge of protective fury, but before he could respond, Shaylee knelt beside the girls. Listen to me, both of you, she said firmly. There is nothing wrong with our arrangement. Counselor Trelvan's son is repeating adult prejudices he does not understand. Her tendrils softened as she stroked Iris's cheek. And your father would be proud of the friendship you found with Lily. We'll speak with your teachers, Eric added. This kind of behavior isn't acceptable. After the girls left for school, with extra treats in their lunches and promises to stay together, Eric turned to Shaylee. This is because of Trelvan, isn't it? He's poisoning his own son's mind with this garbage. Shaylee sighed, her tendrils drooping. It's more complicated than that. Trelvan has expressed interest in me as a potential mate. What? Eric felt an unexpected jolt of jealousy. In Nilarian culture, it's customary for high-ranking males to seek unions with the widows of respected diplomats, Shaylee explained. It's considered an honor. Is that what you want? Eric asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. No, her answer was immediate and firm. Trelvan is respected, but he is cold and calculating. Nothing like... She trailed off. Nothing like what? Shaylee met his gaze, her sea-green eyes intense. Nothing like you, Eric. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Eric took a step closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. Shaylee, His communicator buzzed loudly, breaking the moment. Eric swore under his breath as he checked the message. I have to go. Emergency in Section 8. He hesitated. We should talk about this later. Shaylee nodded, her expression unreadable. Yes, later. The day dragged endlessly. Eric's mind kept returning to Shaylee's words, to the look in her eyes. By the time he finished his shift, he'd made a decision. Whatever was developing between them, he wouldn't let Trelvan's interference or station gossip dictate their choices. He was halfway home when his communicator buzzed again, a message from the school. Both girls had been involved in an incident. His heart racing, Eric rushed to the education sector. He found Lily and Iris sitting outside the administrator's office. Lily sporting a bruised knuckle, and Iris with tear tracks on her blue cheeks. What happened? Eric demanded, kneeling before them. Mevran pushed Iris, Lily explained, her chin jutting defiantly. So I pushed him back. Then he called you a bad name, so I hit him. You hit the counselor's son? Eric groaned. He deserved it, Lily insisted. He said humans were only good for manual labor, and that you were Shaylee's, her servant. Eric sighed, torn between pride at his daughter's loyalty and concern about the diplomatic implications. The office door opened, revealing Shaylee in conversation with the school administrator, and behind them, Counselor Trellovan himself, his tendrils arranged in a pattern of barely contained fury. "Mr. Donovan," the administrator began, "we need to discuss your daughter's behavior." "My son was assaulted by this human child," Trellovan interrupted, his voice cold. "After your son pushed my daughter and insulted their family," Shaylee countered, her normally melodious voice sharp. "Family?" Trellvan's tendrils writhed in disgust. "This unnatural arrangement is hardly a family. You dishonor your late husband's memory with every day you spend in this human's dwelling." Eric stepped forward, placing himself between Trellvan and Shaylee. "That's enough. Your problem is with me, not with her." "Indeed, human," Trellvan sneered. "You have overstepped your bounds. Shaylee is a Nalarian widow of high standing. Her future should be with her own kind, not serving as your household convenience and whatever else you use her for." Eric's fist clenched, but Shaylee placed a restraining hand on his arm. The touch sent that now familiar warmth through him, steadying his anger. "I am not a possession to be claimed as Trellovan," Shaylee said with quiet dignity. "My choices are my own, and I choose to remain with Eric and Lily." Trellovan's eyes narrowed. "This is not over, Shaylee. The council will hear of this inappropriate situation." He turned to his son, who had been watching with wide eyes. "Come, Maveron. We have no more business with these people." After they left, the administrator sighed heavily. "I cannot condone violence, regardless of provocation. Both girls will need to apologize to Maveron tomorrow." "Understood," Eric said, though privately he thought Lily's punch had been well-deserved. The walk home was quiet, both girls subdued by the confrontation. Once they were settled with a holovid in the living room, Eric found Shaylee in the kitchen, her tendrils agitated as she prepared dinner. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is my fault. I've put you in an impossible position." Shaylee turned to him, her expression fierce. "No, Eric. Trellovan does not speak for all Nilarians, just as the bullies at school do not speak for all children. What we have built here, this home, this life, it matters. It is worth defending." "What exactly have we built, Shaylee?" Eric asked softly. She moved closer, her tendrils relaxing as she reached up to touch his face. "Something unexpected, something wonderful." The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. Eric leaned down, drawn by an irresistible pull, and Shaylee rose to meet him. Their lips met in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened, unleashing weeks of suppressed longing. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Eric rested his forehead against hers. "I guess that answers my question," he murmured. Shaylee's musical laugh filled the space between them. "Indeed it does, human. Indeed it does." The official summons arrived 3 days after the school incident. Eric stared at the formal document on his tablet, his jaw clenched. "The Harmony Station Interspecies Council requests the presence of Eric Donovan and Shaylee Naveron to address concerns regarding their domestic arrangement and its impact on station harmony." "They can't be serious," Eric muttered, showing the message to Shaylee as she prepared breakfast. "This is our private life." Shaylee's tendrils coiled anxiously as she read. "Trellvan has more influence than I realize. He's invoked the Cultural Preservation Clause." "The what?" "A provision in the station charter that allows intervention when cultural practices are threatened." Her sea-green eyes met his. "He's claiming our relationship undermines Nalarian customs." Eric ran a hand through his blonde hair in frustration. "This is ridiculous. We're consenting adults." "In human terms, yes." Shaylee's voice softened. "But Nilarian society has strict protocols for widows, especially those of diplomatic rank." The past 3 days had transformed their relationship. That first kiss in the kitchen had broken a dam, leading to stolen moments of affection whenever the girls weren't looking. Last night, after the children were asleep, they had shared more than kisses. A passionate, tender exploration of their differences and similarities that left Eric in awe of how perfectly they fit together despite their different species. And now, the morning after their first night of intimacy, they faced an official challenge to their very right to be together. I won't let them separate us, Eric said firmly, taking her hand. Her skin was warmer than a human's, with a subtle texture that sent pleasant tingles through his fingertips. The hearing is tomorrow, Shaylee noted, her tendrils betraying her anxiety despite her calm tone. We should prepare the girls. Telling Lily and Iris proved more difficult than anticipated. The girls had grown inseparable, their initial differences forgotten in the bond of shared play and secrets. But why do stupid adults get to decide if we can be a family? Lily demanded, her small face flushed with indignation. Because adults make things complicated, Eric answered honestly. But I promise we'll fight for our family. That night, after tucking the girls in, Eric found Shaylee in their bedroom. No longer just his, but theirs. She stood by the viewport, the stars illuminating her blue skin with an ethereal glow. You're worried, he said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her slender waist. She leaned back against his chest. Nilarian culture values tradition above all. What we've found together, this beautiful, unexpected connection, they may not understand it. Then we'll make them understand. Eric turned her to face him. I love you, Shaylee. I didn't plan it, didn't expect it. But there it is, and I'll be damned if I let some council tell me who I can love. Her tendrils rippled with emotion as she reached up to touch his face. My people have a saying, the heart knows no boundaries, only the mind creates them. My heart chose you, Eric Donovan, long before my mind accepted it. Their kiss deepened, filled with the urgency of uncertain tomorrows. Later, as they lay entwined, Shaylee traced patterns on his chest. Humans approach intimacy differently than Nilarians, she observed, a hint of wonder in her voice. Better or worse? Eric asked, suddenly self-conscious. Her musical laugh filled the darkness. Different. More direct. Nilarians typically engage in elaborate courtship rituals lasting months. Humans are refreshingly efficient. Efficient? Eric raised an eyebrow. Not exactly the compliment a man hopes for. Shaylee's tendrils tickled his neck playfully. Perhaps passionate is the better word. You humans don't hide your desires behind ritual. It's quite liberating. The council chamber was imposing, a circular room with elevated seats for the 7 representatives of the major species aboard Harmony Station. Eric and Shaylee stood in the center, hand in hand facing their judges. Counselor Trellvan sat directly opposite them, his tendrils arranged in a formal pattern that Eric had learned signified authority and judgment. Beside him sat representatives from the Praxian, Terran, Valerian, Centauri Drell, and Tassian delegations. Commander Graves, the human representative, spoke first. This council has been convened to address concerns regarding cultural integration. Counselor Trellvan, please state your case. Trellvan rose, his tall form imposing. Esteemed colleagues, I bring before you a matter of grave cultural significance. Shaylee Navran, widow of diplomat Krell von Navran, has entered into an inappropriate relationship with a human engineer, violating sacred Nilarian customs regarding widowhood and interspecies relations. He continued, his voice carrying through the chamber. By Nilarian law, a diplomatic widow must observe a mourning period of no less than 2 cycles before considering new attachments, and then only with the approval of the diplomatic corps. Furthermore, interspecies unions are permitted only after extensive cultural compatibility assessments. Eric felt Shaylee's hand tighten in his. I request this council order the immediate dissolution of this unauthorized arrangement and place Shaylee and her daughter under Nilarian community supervision until proper protocols can be observed. Commander Graves turned to them. Mr. Donovan, Miss Navarin, how do you respond? Eric stepped forward, his engineer's mind organizing his thoughts logically. Counselors, I respect cultural traditions, but Harmony Station was founded on principles of freedom and mutual respect. Shaylee and I met through a professional arrangement. She needed employment. I needed household assistance. What developed between us was unexpected but genuine. He looked at each council member in turn. We're not asking anyone to approve of our relationship. We're simply asking for the right to determine our own lives and the lives of our children, who have formed a deep bond. Shaylee spoke next, her musical voice steady. Counselors, I honor my Nilarian heritage. My late husband served our people with distinction, but he also believed in cultural exchange and progress. Her tendrils moved in a pattern Eric recognized as determination. The traditions Counselor Trelvan invokes were designed to protect widows in a patriarchal system, not to control their hearts. The Centauri representative, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, leaned forward. Counselor Trelvan, is your concern truly for Nilarian culture, or is it perhaps more personal? Trelvan's tendrils stiffened. My motives are irrelevant. The law is clear. Actually, Commander Graves interjected, station charter supersedes cultural law when residents choose to invoke personal choice provisions. Has Ms. Navarne been coerced in any way? No, Shaylee answered firmly. My choice was made freely. The council chambers erupted in murmurs as the representatives conferred. Eric and Shaylee stood resolute, their hands still joined as they awaited their fate. The council chamber fell silent as the 7 representatives returned from their private deliberation. Eric squeezed Shaylee's hand, drawing strength from her warmth as they awaited the verdict. Commander Graves, the human representative, spoke first. After careful consideration, this council has reached a decision regarding the petition filed by Counselor Trelvan. Eric held his breath, feeling Shaylee's tendrils brush against his arm in a gesture he'd come to recognize as seeking reassurance. By a vote of 5-2, the council finds that station charter provisions regarding personal freedom take precedence over cultural traditions when those traditions are not being imposed upon members of the culture in question against their will. Graves' eyes met Eric's with a subtle nod. The petition is denied. Ms. Navarre and Mr. Donovan are free to determine the nature of their relationship without interference. Relief flooded through Eric. Beside him, Shaylee's tendrils rippled with joy. This is outrageous. Trelvan rose from his seat, his tendrils rigid with fury. You undermine centuries of Nilarian tradition with this ruling. The Centauri representative's melodious voice cut through Trelvan's protest. Traditions evolve, Counselor. That is the nature of cultural growth. This is not about cultural growth, Trelvan hissed. This is about prophecy and power. A murmur ran through the chamber. Commander Graves leaned forward. Explain yourself, Counselor. Trelvan's composure cracked, revealing a desperation Eric hadn't seen before. The ancient texts speak of it, a union between Nilarian and human that would produce offspring with unprecedented abilities. A child who would challenge the traditional order, bringing chaos to our carefully structured society. Eric blinked in surprise. Wait, this is about a prophecy? You tried to separate us because of some ancient superstition? Not superstition, Trelvan snapped. Our seers have confirmed the potential. Human adaptability combined with Nilarian psychic sensitivity could create beings beyond our control. The diplomatic corps has monitored human-Nilarian interactions for decades to prevent such unions. Shaylee stepped forward, her voice steady despite her obvious shock. Is this why my husband was assigned to remote outposts? To keep him away from human contact? Trelvan knew his duty, Trelvan replied coldly. As should you. My husband died because of that duty, Shaylee's voice trembled with anger. And now you would use his memory to control me. Eric placed a protective arm around her shoulders. This ends now, Trelvan. Your prophecies and politics don't get to dictate our lives. Trelvan's eyes narrowed. This is bigger than your selfish desires, human. The very fabric of Nilarian society is at stake. Perhaps, said the Drell representative, her crystalline voice resonating through the chamber, Nilarian society could benefit from some evolution. You don't understand, Trelvan insisted. The prophecy speaks of a child with the adaptability of humans and the psychic gifts of Nilarians, a combination that could disrupt the hierarchical foundation of our entire culture. Sounds to me, Commander Graves observed dryly, like you're afraid of progress. This council session is concluded, announced the Praxian chairperson. Our ruling stands. This matter is closed. Trelvan's face contorted with rage. It is not closed! By ancient Nilarian law, I invoke the right of challenge. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Shaylee gasped, her tendrils coiling tightly. What's happening? Eric whispered. He's challenging you to ritual combat, Shaylee explained, her voice tight with fear. An ancient custom rarely invoked. The winner claims the right to determine my fate. That's barbaric, Eric protested. It is also not recognized under station charter, Commander Graves stated firmly. Counselor Trelvan, you will stand down. But Trelvan had already descended from the council platform, approaching Eric with predatory grace. Does the human refuse the challenge, proving his unworthiness? Eric felt a surge of protective fury. This alien bureaucrat had tried to destroy their happiness through legal means, and now through archaic ritual. Enough was enough. I accept, Eric said, stepping forward despite Shaylee's attempt to hold him back. Eric, no, Shaylee pleaded. Nylarian ritual combat is dangerous. Our strength exceeds yours. Trust me, Eric murmured, squeezing her hand. Then to Trelvan, name your terms. Trelvan's tendrils arranged themselves in a pattern of a smug satisfaction. The traditional challenge requires only that the combatants remain within a circle of honor. The first to step outside loses. Simple enough for even a human to understand. Fine, Eric said. Let's get this over with. The council chamber was quickly rearranged, chairs pushed back to create a circular space marked by luminescent tape on the floor. Eric removed his jacket, standing in his fitted black t-shirt that revealed the muscular physique maintained by years of physical labor in the station's enhanced gravity. Trelvan shed his formal robes, revealing a lean, sinewy frame. His tendrils moved in complex patterns that Eric recognized as preparation for combat. Begin, called the Praxian chairperson. Trelvan moved with surprising speed, his tendrils extending to twice their normal length and whipping toward Eric's face. Eric ducked, feeling the air displacement as they passed overhead. Humans, Trelvan taunted, circling. So physically limited. No wonder your species relies on crude technology rather than natural evolution. Eric didn't waste breath responding. He watched Trelvan's movements, analyzing patterns like he would a complex engineering problem. The Nylarian was faster, stronger, and had the advantage of his prehensile tendrils. But Eric had something Trelvan lacked: human adaptability. When Trelvan lunged again, Eric was ready. Instead of dodging, he stepped into the attack, grabbing two of the extended tendrils and yanking hard. Trelvan howled in pain and surprise as Eric used the Nylarian's own momentum to swing him around. You forget, Eric said through gritted teeth, humans evolved on a high-gravity world. We may not have your fancy appendages, but we know how to use leverage. With a final heave, Eric released Trelvan, sending him stumbling toward the edge of the circle. The Nylarian counselor barely caught himself before crossing the line. Impressive, Trelvan conceded, his tendrils now moving more cautiously, but futile. The next attack came from multiple angles, tendrils whipping at Eric's legs, arms, and face simultaneously. He blocked what he could, but several struck home, leaving stinging welts. Eric stumbled back, dangerously close to the circle's edge. Trelvan pressed his advantage, moving in for the final push. Your kind always loses in the end, human. You lack the refined evolution of older species. Something in Eric snapped at those words. Not anger, but determination. The same stubborn human resolve that had carried his species from cave dwellings to the stars. You know what humans have that you don't, Trelvan? Eric asked, straightening despite his pain. We never accept limitations. We never stop trying to be better. With unexpected speed, Eric dropped to the floor, sweeping his leg in a wide arc that caught Trelvan's ankles. The Nylarian counselor crashed down, his tendrils flailing for balance. Before he could recover, Eric was on him, using his superior weight to pin Trelvan and drag him toward the circle's edge. This is the true strength of humanity, Eric said, his voice steady despite his exertion. Not our bodies, but our hearts. We fight for what we love, not for prophecies or power. With a final push, Eric shoved Trelvan across the line. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by Eric's heavy breathing. Then Commander Graves' voice rang out. The challenge is complete. Eric Donovan is victorious. Trelvan lay where he had fallen, his tendrils limp with defeat. Impossible, he whispered. Eric stood, offering his hand to the fallen counselor. Not impossible, just human. After a moment's hesitation, Trelvan accepted the assistance, rising with as much dignity as he could muster. The ancient texts, they were right to warn us about humans, he said quietly. Your kind defies all logical prediction. That's kind of our specialty, Eric replied with a small smile. Later that evening, in the privacy of their apartment, Eric and Shaylee celebrated their victory with the girls, who had heard exaggerated playground versions of the epic battle. "Did you really throw Counselor Trelvin across the room, Daddy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with admiration. "Not exactly," Eric laughed, wincing slightly as Shaylee applied a healing salve to his welts. "But I did show him that humans don't give up easily, especially when they're fighting for their family," Shaylee added, her tendrils caressing his cheek tenderly. After the girls were asleep, Eric and Shaylee stood by the viewport, watching the stars as they had that night before the hearing. "So," Eric said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, "a prophecy about human Nihilarian children, huh? Should I be worried?" Shaylee turned in his embrace, her sea-green eyes meeting his. "Are you concerned about potentially having children with unprecedented abilities who might challenge traditional power structures?" "When you put it that way," Eric grinned, "it sounds like exactly the kind of trouble I'd like to get into." Her musical laugh filled the space between them. "Humans truly are remarkable creatures. Most species would be terrified by such a prophecy." "We prefer to see it as potential," Eric said, brushing his lips against hers. "That's the thing about humans. We're always looking forward, not back." "Is that why you asked the station chaplain to perform a bonding ceremony next week?" Shaylee teased, her tendrils playfully tickling his neck. "That," Eric replied, pulling her closer, "and because I can't imagine my life without you. Our daughters need a real home, and we've made one, together." As their lips met in a passionate kiss, Eric reflected that sometimes the most unexpected journeys led to the most perfect destinations. What had begun as a simple advertisement for household help had transformed into something miraculous. A family forged across the stars, stronger for its differences and united by love. And if someday they did have children who changed the galaxy, well, that was just humanity doing what it did best, defying expectations and creating new possibilities. Humanity indeed.